We have enough nuclear weapons to blow up the world 150 times. Russia has a lot of nuclear weapons, and China will have a lot. They have some, they have quite a bit. Russia announced that they were going to be doing a test. Certainly, North Korea's been testing. Pakistan's been testing.
For 3 decades, the world has operated under an unspoken yet ironclad promise. No more nuclear explosive testing. Since the early 1990s, the destructive fire of the Cold War era was confined to history books and vast, contaminated deserts. But today, that decades-long silence is breaking. Major global powers, the United States, Russia, and China, are suddenly signaling a readiness to return to the brink, actively preparing their historical test sites for detonation. Why, after 30 years of restraint, are we debating the resurrection of nuclear explosions? And what are the immediate, catastrophic environmental and geopolitical consequences if a single mushroom cloud appears again?
The original nuclear testing epoch, from 1945 to 1996, saw over 2,000 explosive tests. This was an era of raw, destructive demonstration, culminating in events like the Soviet Union's 50-megaton Tsar bomber. The widespread, indiscriminate fallout from these atmospheric tests forced the first major agreement, the 1963 Partial Test Ban Treaty, which moved all permissible detonations underground. The ultimate goal was the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, or CTBT, adopted in 1996. This treaty bans all nuclear explosions anywhere on Earth. But critically, the CTBT never legally entered into force. It remains a voluntary global norm held hostage by 9 key states, including China and the United States, who have signed but never ratified it.
The dam officially broke in November 2023, when Russia's President, Vladimir Putin, withdrew his country's ratification of the CTBT. This unprecedented move, de-ratification, was justified by the Kremlin as necessary to eliminate an unacceptable imbalance between Russia and the United States, which had never ratified the treaty. Moscow's move is not necessarily about an immediate technical need to test. It is a profound act of strategic coercion. By putting the CTBT status on the table, Russia weaponized the US Senate's decades-long failure to act. The signal is clear. If the US wants to play this geopolitical game, Russia has eliminated its own legal barrier to testing. The situation worsened when Russia announced the successful test of the nuclear-powered Burevestnik missile, boasting unlimited range and evasion abilities. This marked a major milestone in Putin's strategic message to the West amid Ukraine tensions. President Vladimir Putin claims it can outsmart any defense shield and travel virtually without limit. The announcement marks what Moscow calls a decisive step toward deployment of one of its most secretive and controversial military projects. Meanwhile, the dynamic between Washington and Beijing is equally tense. As China rapidly modernizes its arsenal, concerns grow over its adherence to the zero-yield standard. The pressure to test is now driven by a competition in strategic credibility.
The consequences of breaking the moratorium are not theoretical. They are guaranteed and multi-generational. Even underground testing, which many assume is cleaner, is profoundly destructive. Detonations often cause the accidental venting of radionuclides into the atmosphere. More dangerously, underground tests fracture the Earth, leading to the contamination of critical subterranean water sources. We have proof of the scale of this damage. A 1973 Soviet Arctic test had the seismic magnitude of a major earthquake, triggering an 80 million-ton rock slide that blocked glacial streams. The human cost is horrific. At the former Soviet site of Semipalatinsk, the soil and vegetation are still heavily contaminated with isotopes like strontium-90 and cesium-137. Over 1.5 million people were exposed to ionizing radiation. Studies show this exposure leads to elevated risks of various cancers, cardiovascular diseases, and congenital birth defects passed down through generations. In China's Lopnur province, cancer incidence is estimated to be 30 to 35% higher than the national average due to past testing. The radioactive materials created by past atmospheric tests, such as carbon-14, are predicted to dominate long-term effects on humans for up to 8,000 years. Any state that tests today does so with full, informed knowledge of the guaranteed multi-millennial destruction that will result.
Ultimately, the greatest danger is geopolitical fragmentation, the collapse of the global security architecture. If a major power tests, it will trigger virtual proliferation, an unrestrained arms race among established nuclear states to verify their newest, most powerful warheads. More perilously, it risks horizontal proliferation, the acquisition of nuclear weapons by new states. The CTBT is the keystone of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, or NPT. If the major nuclear powers openly renounce the commitment not to test, the NPT's fundamental bargain is destroyed. States facing immediate, high threat levels, such as Japan or South Korea, would be compelled to reconsider their non-nuclear doctrines. Meanwhile, rogue actors like North Korea, whose Punggye-ri test site is already maintained in readiness for a 7th test, would be given political cover and normalization for their actions. A nuclear test explosion is not merely a technical step. It is a seismic signal that unlimited strategic competition is now the global norm. The push to resume testing is a political choice, not a technical necessity. It is a siren song. We must resist. It has been said that dinosaurs survived for 160 million years because they were dumb, while we, with all our intelligence, might not last 200,000. We must demonstrate that, unlike the dinosaurs, we have the wisdom to survive our own power.